Taliban, the theft of childhood, the betrayal of women. The history of the Taliban starts with the Cold War between Russia and USA. In 1979 to 1989, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to support a communist regime. USA, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia gave guns and money to Mujahideen, Islamistic guerrilla groups that fought against the Soviets. The war killed hundreds of thousands After the Soviets drew back from Afghanistan, there happened a civil war where the Mujahideen leaders started warring against each other. The civil war lasted until 1992. In the total lawlessness that existed during these times, a new group emerged, the Taliban. The Taliban are inspired by an extreme interpretation of Islam. They want to create a pure Islamic society. The Taliban were created in 1994 and took control of Afghanistan and Kabul in 1996. In 2001 to 2021, USA invaded Afghanistan because the Taliban protected Osama bin Laden, who was from Al-Qaeda. By examining the historical origins of the Taliban, I became critical of the superpowers, Russia and USA, in the involvement in Afghanistan. Russia should not have invaded Afghanistan to help the communist regime. The communist regime had seized power through a coup, which is wrong, and the regime was very unpopular by the people. The people of Afghanistan should have determined their own destiny, and other countries should not interfere in the self-governing of a country and its people. That is one of the human rights by the UN's Declaration of Human Rights. Between 500,000 to 1 million civilian Afghans died during the years of the Soviet invasion. These deaths could have been prevented or at least greatly reduced if the Russians hadn't invaded. They are at least partly to blame for this. Russian foreign policy in Afghanistan has been partly self-interested, seeking its own gain in Afghanistan. Their foreign policy has also been immature and below the levels and ideals that should govern a country's foreign policy. Now I want to talk about USA foreign policy in Afghanistan. It was wrong by the USA to aid the Mujahideen. It was an illegitimate war by the Mujahideen, so USA supported that because of fighting communism. What's so wrong with communism? It gives the right for a country to meddle and do war in other countries' dealings with communism. War isn't a solution, and it was unjust by USA to do this. It also led to extremism and Islamic extremism and the rise of the Taliban, which has destabilized Afghanistan for decades. It is also a brutal tyrannical regime that is a religious dictatorship that suppresses its people and doesn't let them live freely. Another thing wrong by the USA was the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan. I think it was wrong by USA to invade because Afghanistan was hiding Osama. I think it was in Afghanistan's right to hide Osama, a terrorist. I think it's a country's right to hide a terrorist as long as they don't participate in terrorism themselves. I think terrorists also has a right to life. It was fully morally wrong to invade Afghanistan and cause the death of 200,000 Afghans in their fight against terrorism. They excuse this by their war against terrorism, but I think war was not right, not this war by USA. I criticize USA's foreign politics for often being childish, immature, and often motivated by petty vengeance that is often extremely disproportionate in retaliation. I believe vengeance is wrong and that is what Jesus advocated for. That vengeance is wrong and that you should forgive and love your enemies. What USA does is bordering on bullying in their foreign politics. I think USA shielded from accountability of their action by their big power in the world, but I would like to see that USA was held accountable on their actions by international crime courts, and that America grew up and matured in their behavior to others, especially southern countries in the globe, and truly treated others by the golden rule from all the major religions. Treat others the way you want to be treated, because America doesn't do that and they get away with it with impunity. Today, America is motivated largely by self-interest, greed, economic and political self-interest in their foreign politics. They are motivated by a huge share by self-interest. They have volatile and immature emotions in governance of their foreign policy. Now it comes time to speak about how we fight the Taliban. Not with guns and war, but with education. We need to educate the boys of Afghanistan in a good way to fight them getting radicalized and getting to become extremists. We need to educate the boys in ways that empower but not indoctrinates. We need to teach critical thinking because extremism grows where obedience replaces thought. We need to teach a diverse curricula that has science, literature, history, arts, and ethics. We need to teach them forward-thinking values and ideas, such as human rights, democracy, gender equality, respect, peace, and peaceful conflict resolution. We need to find ways to educate the boys in these ways, despite it being in some areas and ways forbidden by the Taliban. We need to give boys a job and a purpose, offer vocational education such as carpentry, agriculture, solar tech, coding. To combat the Taliban, we must also find ways to organize and lead democracy grassroots activism against the Taliban. We must also support democracy activists in Afghanistan. Even during the most difficult of circumstances and situations, it's possible to enact change and overcome it. Even during the darkest of days, there is light. It's possible for the Afghan people to bring democracy to their country and topple the Taliban. Democracy is not a Western thing, but a universal value. Now it comes time to talk about women's rights and situation in Afghanistan under the Taliban. The situation is dire, and these are the following ways women's life in Afghanistan has been restricted in harmful ways. Education has been banned past grade 6. Universities are closed to women. Many jobs for women outside the home are forbidden for women. Women can travel without a male chaperone. Healthcare access is limited, and women are often not allowed to see a male doctor. Laws protecting women from domestic violence and forced marriage are no longer enforced. We need to hold the Taliban accountable and put pressure on them to let women be free and equal. We can put economic sanctions on them to cause them to negotiate. We can make all international aid conditional on improvements in women's rights. We can make the recognition and codification of gender apartheid as a crime under international law. We can support the women in Afghanistan by funding and training them. The women and male allies. We must have and increase the number of male allies. They can lead a resistance and a movement against these restrictions. They can, for example, lead underground schools. We must show tolerance to our enemies and even to the Taliban by meeting them and turning enemies to our friends, because as Desmond Tutu says, my humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. Let's talk to the Taliban and turn them into our friends, because we share the same future and because they are human. Don't dehumanize anyone. That never leads to anything good.